can't see a thing. Help me.
December 8th, 2020, and Flight 445 is losing altitude rapidly over the Rocky Mountains when passenger David Chen realizes the man sitting 3 rows ahead helping other passengers is his brother Michael, who he hasn't spoken to in 12 years after a bitter family feud with engines failing. And only minutes before potential impact, these 2 estranged brothers must work together to save 198 lives while confronting the painful past that tore their family apart. What happened next will prove that sometimes it takes facing death to remember what family really means. Stay until the end, because this story will show you that forgiveness and love can emerge even in the darkest moments when everything seems lost. David Chen had been dreading this business trip to Seattle for weeks, not because of the meetings or presentations he would need to give, but because it reminded him of the life he had left behind when he moved from San Francisco to Denver 12 years ago. At 38, he was a successful software engineer who had built a comfortable life in Colorado. But the flight path over the mountains always brought back memories of his childhood in California and the family relationships that had been destroyed by pride and misunderstanding. The Boeing 737-800, operating as Mountain West Airlines Flight 445, was scheduled to depart Denver International Airport at 2:15 p.m. on what forecasters had warned would be a challenging weather day, with severe turbulence expected over the Rocky Mountains. David had chosen an aisle seat in row 18, hoping to get some work done during the flight, while also trying to avoid thinking about the family Christmas gathering he would be missing for the 12th consecutive year. As passengers boarded the aircraft, David noticed a man in row 15 who seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place where he might have seen him before. The passenger was helping an elderly woman with her carry-on luggage and speaking in a calm, reassuring voice that triggered something deep in David's memory, but he dismissed the feeling and returned to his laptop, assuming it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. Flight 445 was carrying 198 passengers and a crew of 6, including Captain Sarah Rodriguez, who had been flying for Mountain West for 15 years, and First Officer Tom Wilson, whose 8 years of experience included extensive mountain flying in challenging weather conditions. Flight 445 was carrying 198 passengers and a crew of 6, including Captain Sarah Rodriguez, who had been flying for Mountain West for 15 years. The flight attendants were led by senior crew member Jennifer Walsh, who had worked with both pilots on numerous previous flights and knew they were among the airline's most capable teams. The passenger manifest that day included business travelers, families heading home for the holidays, and several medical personnel traveling to a conference in Seattle. Among them was Dr. Lisa Park, an emergency room physician who was looking forward to presenting her research on trauma response protocols. She would later play a crucial role in the events that would unfold during what was supposed to be a routine 3-hour flight. David's life had been defined by his estrangement from his family, particularly from his older brother Michael, who had been his closest friend throughout their childhood in San Francisco, where they had grown up as the sons of Chinese immigrants who had worked tirelessly to build a successful restaurant business. The brothers had been inseparable until a devastating argument over their father's inheritance had torn the family apart when David was 26 years old. The dispute had started over his decision to pursue a career in technology rather than joining the family restaurant business as his parents had always expected. Michael had accused David of abandoning their family traditions and being ashamed of his heritage, while David felt that Michael was trying to control his life and prevent him from achieving his own dreams and ambitions. The argument had escalated during their father's funeral, when emotions were already running high, and both brothers said things they would later regret but were too proud to take back. David had moved to Denver shortly afterward and had deliberately avoided any contact with his family, despite his mother's repeated attempts to reconcile the brothers and heal the wounds that were destroying their once close relationship. Michael Chen had remained in San Francisco, where he had successfully expanded their father's restaurant into a chain of 5 locations, while also raising his 2 children as a single father after his wife had died in a car accident 4 years earlier. At 41, he was respected in his community and had built a life centered around family responsibility and honoring his parents' legacy but he carried the pain of losing his younger brother to a feud that seemed increasingly meaningless. As the years passed, the takeoff from Denver proceeded normally, as Flight 445 climbed into the December afternoon sky, with Captain Rodriguez noting the building weather system ahead, while First Officer Wilson monitored their flight path and communication with air traffic control. The passengers settled in for what they expected to be a routine flight. Despite the anticipated turbulence over the mountains, David was absorbed in his work on a presentation about cloud computing security. When the aircraft began experiencing the first signs of trouble, approximately 45 minutes into the flight, the initial turbulence was within normal parameters for mountain flying, but the intensity increased rapidly as they encountered weather conditions that were more severe than forecast. At 3:18 p.m., the aircraft was struck by severe wind shear that caused a dramatic altitude loss and sent passengers grabbing for their armrests, while flight attendants secured loose items and prepared for what appeared to be an extended period of rough air. Captain Rodriguez made an announcement, asking everyone to remain seated with seatbelts fastened, while the crew worked to find smoother air. The situation deteriorated rapidly when the aircraft encountered a pocket of severe turbulence that caused structural stress alarms to activate in the cockpit, while passengers experienced the terrifying sensation of the plane dropping suddenly before recovering. Several passengers were injured by falling luggage, while others became airsick from the violent movements. David looked up from his laptop during a particularly severe jolt and noticed that the man in row 15 had gotten up despite the seatbelt sign and was helping other passengers who were clearly frightened by the increasingly violent turbulence. Something about the man's profile and the way he moved triggered a flood of childhood memories that David had been suppressing for 12 years. He realized that the passenger helping others during this emergency was his estranged brother Michael, who he hadn't seen or spoken to since their father's funeral. The shock of seeing Michael on the same flight was overwhelming, but David found himself unable to move or call out, as emotions he had buried for over a decade. Michael was completely focused on helping a young mother secure her infant's car seat and reassuring frightened passengers that the turbulence would pass. His natural leadership and calm demeanor were having a calming effect on those around him, but he had no idea that his younger brother was watching him from just 3 rows behind. The aircraft's condition continued to worsen, as Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Wilson struggled with multiple system failures that appeared to be related to the severe turbulence and possible structural damage. Warning lights illuminated throughout the cockpit, while automated systems began shutting down in response to conditions that exceeded their normal operating parameters. Dr. Lisa Park had moved to the front of the cabin to assist with passengers who had been injured during the severe turbulence and was working with the flight attendants to provide medical care, while also helping to keep everyone calm. Her emergency room experience was invaluable in triaging injuries and managing the chaos that was developing in the cabin. David realized that the situation was becoming genuinely dangerous as he noticed that the flight attendants looked increasingly concerned and were preparing equipment that was typically only used during major emergencies. The aircraft was still experiencing severe turbulence, but now there were also mechanical sounds and vibrations that suggested serious problems with the engines or other critical systems. The announcement from Captain Rodriguez confirmed David's fears as she informed passengers that they were experiencing multiple system failures and would be making an emergency landing at the nearest suitable airport. The professional tone of her voice couldn't hide the seriousness of their situation as she asked everyone to review emergency procedures and prepare for a possible evacuation. As the crisis deepened, David watched his brother Michael continue to help other passengers. Without any thought for his own safety, the man who had been his best friend throughout childhood was demonstrating the same courage and selflessness that David remembered from their youth before pride and misunderstanding had driven them apart. The aircraft began a rapid descent as the pilots worked to reach a lower altitude where the air might be smoother and the damaged systems might function more reliably. But David could see from Michael's actions and the expressions of the flight crew that they were facing a life-threatening emergency that would test everyone's courage and resolve. The moment David Chen realized his estranged brother Michael was on the same failing aircraft created an emotional crisis that competed with the physical danger surrounding them as 12 years of suppressed guilt Anger and love crashed together in his mind, while Flight 445 continued its emergency descent through increasingly violent weather over the Colorado Rockies. David's hands trembled as he unfastened his seatbelt despite the emergency instructions and began moving forward through the cabin toward where Michael was helping other passengers. Every step brought back memories of their childhood adventures, their shared dreams, and the bitter words that had ended their relationship. But the immediate danger facing everyone on board made their personal conflict seem trivial compared to the possibility that they might both die without ever reconciling. Michael was completely absorbed in helping a teenage boy who had been injured when luggage fell from an overhead compartment during the severe turbulence. His gentle manner and reassuring voice were exactly as David remembered from their youth, when Michael had always been the protective older brother who took care of everyone around him, including his younger sibling. The aircraft continued to experience multiple system failures as Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Wilson fought to maintain control while dealing with engine problems, electrical malfunctions, and structural damage that threatened their ability to reach any airport safely. Their professional training was being tested beyond anything they had experienced as the aircraft bucked and shuddered through the mountain turbulence. Dr. Lisa Park was coordinating medical care for the growing number of injured passengers, while also helping the flight attendants prepare for a potential emergency landing that could result in additional casualties. Her emergency room experience had taught her to remain calm under pressure, but the combination of medical emergencies and aircraft systems failures was creating an unprecedented crisis. David reached row 15, just as Michael looked up from bandaging the injured teenager's head wound, and their eyes met for the first time in 12 years. The recognition was instantaneous and devastating for both brothers, as they saw in each other's faces the pain and longing that had been hidden beneath years of stubborn pride and unresolved anger. Neither brother spoke initially as they stared at each other while the aircraft continued to shake and lurch through the turbulent air. The noise of failing systems and frightened passengers created a surreal backdrop for this impossible reunion that neither man could have imagined when they boarded the flight just hours earlier. Michael's first words to his brother after 12 years of silence were typically selfless, as he asked David to help him with the injured passengers while pushing aside the emotional shock of their reunion. His ability to focus on the immediate needs of others, despite the personal crisis, demonstrated the character that David had always admired, but had forgotten during their years of estrangement. David immediately began helping Michael tend to injured passengers, while both brothers struggled to process the emotions and memories that were flooding back. Despite the life-threatening emergency surrounding them, their natural teamwork and communication resumed, as if the 12 years of separation had been only days rather than more than a decade. The aircraft's emergency descent continued as the pilots worked desperately to reach Denver International Airport, which was now the closest facility with the equipment and medical personnel needed to handle a major emergency landing. But the multiple system failures were making normal flight operations increasingly difficult, while the weather conditions added additional challenges to their survival prospects. Captain Rodriguez made another announcement, informing passengers that they would be attempting an emergency landing in Denver and asking everyone to prepare for impact procedures, while flight attendants demonstrated crash positions and evacuation routes. The professional calmness in her voice couldn't hide the gravity of their situation. As multiple warning systems continued to alarm in the cockpit, Michael and David found themselves working together naturally, as they had during their childhood, helping to secure loose items in the cabin and reassuring frightened passengers, while Dr. Park provided medical care to those who had been injured during the turbulent. Their reunion was taking place in the midst of a crisis that put everything else into perspective. The brothers began talking quietly while they worked, recognizing that they might not survive the next hour and that this could be their only chance to address the issues that had kept them apart for so many years. David was the first to acknowledge how stupid and meaningless their fight seemed when faced with the possibility of death. Michael admitted that he had been too proud to reach out after their argument and that he had missed his younger brother every day for 12 years. The pain in his voice was evident as he described how their mother had begged him to contact David, but his stubborn pride had prevented him from making the first move toward reconciliation. David revealed that he had written dozens of letters to Michael over the years. The aircraft shuddered violently as another system failed and the emergency descent became more rapid, forcing both brothers to focus on immediate survival while also dealing with the emotional weight of their reunion. They realized that fate had brought them together at what might be the end of their lives, giving them a chance to heal wounds that had festered for far too long. Other passengers began to notice the remarkable teamwork between Michael and David as they moved through the cabin, helping wherever they were needed, while also providing emotional support to those who were most frightened. Their natural leadership and calm demeanor were having a positive effect on everyone around them, despite their own emotional turmoil. Flight attendant Jennifer Walsh approached the brothers and asked them to help coordinate passenger preparation for the emergency landing. Recognizing that their calm competence was exactly what was needed to keep panic from spreading through the cabin, she had no idea about their personal relationship, but could see that they worked together exceptionally well. The view from the aircraft windows showed the Denver metropolitan area approaching rapidly as Captain Rodriguez lined up for what would be an extremely challenging landing with multiple systems failures and structural damage that could cause the aircraft to break apart on impact. Emergency vehicles were visible along the runway. As rescue teams prepared for the worst-case scenario, Michael took his brother's hand as they prepared for impact and told David that he loved him and was sorry for all the years they had lost to pride and stubbornness. David responded that being reunited with his brother was worth whatever happened next, and that he had never stopped loving Michael despite their bitter separation. The brothers spent their final minutes before landing, talking about their parents, their childhood memories, and their hopes for their families if they survived. The conversation that had been impossible for 12 years was now flowing naturally as they faced the possibility of death together and realized that nothing else mattered except their love for each other. Dr. Park observed the reunion between the brothers while continuing to provide medical care and was moved by their obvious love and regret over their long separation. She recognized that the crisis was bringing out both the best and most honest emotions in everyone aboard the aircraft as they faced their mortality together. The final approach began as Captain Rodriguez announced that everyone should assume crash positions while she attempted to land the damaged aircraft with minimal power and limited control authority. The next few minutes would determine whether Flight 445 would be remembered as a tragedy or a miracle of survival and family reconciliation. As Flight 445 began its final approach to Denver International Airport, the reunion between Michael and David Chen evolved from personal reconciliation to joint leadership, as the brothers realized their combined skills and natural teamwork could help save lives during what promised to be a catastrophic emergency landing with multiple system failures threatening everyone aboard. The aircraft was experiencing severe control problems as Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Wilson struggled with limited hydraulic pressure, damaged electrical systems, and reduced engine power while trying to maintain a stable approach to the runway. Their professional training was being tested to its absolute limits as they fought to bring the Boeing 737 down safely despite conditions that exceeded any emergency scenario. Michael's natural leadership abilities emerged fully as he organized passengers in his section of the cabin, while David used his analytical mind to help assess their situation and coordinate with other passengers who had useful skills or medical training. Together they created an informal command structure that supplemented the official crew's emergency procedures. Elisa Park continued providing medical care to injured passengers while also working closely with the brothers to identify others who could assist during the emergency landing and potential evacuation. Her emergency room experience, combined with Michael and David's organizational skills, created an effective team that was helping to maintain order in an increasingly desperate situation. The flight attendants recognized the valuable assistance the brothers were providing and began coordinating more closely with them as they prepared passengers. Jennifer Walsh was particularly impressed by their ability to remain calm under pressure, while also helping others manage their fear and panic. David found himself thinking clearly about their survival prospects, while also marveling at how naturally he and Michael had resumed their childhood partnership. Despite 12 years of separation, Their ability to anticipate each other's thoughts and actions was unchanged. Even though they had become strangers in so many other ways, Michael was focused on helping a family with young children understand the emergency procedures while also keeping an eye on elderly passengers who might need extra assistance during evacuation. His protective instincts extended to everyone around him, just as they had when the aircraft began to descend more rapidly. As the pilots realized they were losing altitude faster than planned due to the engine problems and structural damage, Captain Rodriguez made another announcement, asking everyone to prepare for a hard landing, while emergency crews on the ground positioned themselves along the runway for immediate response. David and Michael moved through their section of the cabin, making sure everyone understood the evacuation procedures, while also identifying passengers who might need extra help getting off the aircraft quickly if fire or other dangers made rapid evacuation necessary. Their systematic approach was helping to prevent panic, while also maximizing survival chances. The emotional weight of their reunion continued to affect both brothers, even as they focused on immediate survival needs. David kept thinking about all the family gatherings he had missed and the relationship with Michael's children that had been lost due to their stubborn pride. While Michael regretted that his own children had never known their uncle, who had been such an important part of his own childhood, Dr. Park observed how the crisis was bringing out the best qualities in both brothers, while also healing the emotional wounds that had kept them apart for so long. She recognized that extreme situations often revealed people's true character, and that Michael and David were demonstrating remarkable courage and selflessness despite their personal emotional turmoil. The final minutes before landing became a race against time, as the aircraft continued to lose systems, while the pilots worked desperately to maintain enough control for a survivable touchdown. Passengers could see emergency vehicles racing along the runway below, while fire trucks and ambulances prepared for what could be a major disaster. Michael took charge of briefing passengers in the rear section of the aircraft about emergency procedures, while David coordinated with passengers who had military or emergency response backgrounds to ensure they would be ready to assist with evacuation if needed. Their natural teamwork was exactly what was needed in this unprecedented crisis. The brothers found themselves talking about their future plans, assuming they survived, while also preparing for the possibility that they might not see their families again. David promised to reconnect with Michael's children and be the uncle they had never known, while Michael vowed to rebuild the relationship with their mother, who had suffered from their long estrangement. Flight attendant Jennifer Walsh asked Michael and David to position themselves near different emergency exits so they could help coordinate evacuation from multiple locations, recognizing that their leadership and calm demeanor would be crucial if passengers needed to exit the aircraft quickly after landing. The aircraft's damaged systems continued to deteriorate as hydraulic fluid leaked from damaged lines, and electrical problems caused intermittent failures of critical instruments. Captain Rodriguez was essentially flying the aircraft manually while relying on her experience and instincts rather than the automated systems that normally assisted with precision approaches. David realized that his technical background was helping him understand some of the aircraft's problems, while Michael's experience managing multiple restaurant locations had given him skills in crisis management and team coordination that were proving invaluable in organizing passenger response to their emergency. The view from the windows showed Denver International Airport growing larger as they approached what would be either their salvation or their final destination. Both brothers took a moment to appreciate that they had been given the chance to reconcile, and that their reunion had already made their potential sacrifice meaningful, regardless of the landing outcome. Dr. Park positioned herself to provide immediate medical care after landing, while also coordinating with other medical personnel aboard the flight to ensure they could respond quickly to injuries that might occur during impact or evacuation. Her partnership with the brothers had created an effective emergency response team. The final approach phase required maximum concentration from both pilots, while passengers throughout the cabin prepared for impact, following the procedures that Michael, David, and the flight crew had helped them understand. The aircraft was descending faster than normal, while multiple warning systems alerted the crew to continuing system failures. Michael and David exchanged a look of understanding and love as they took their assigned positions near different exits, knowing they had done everything possible to help their fellow passengers. while also healing the wounds between them. Their reunion during this crisis had demonstrated that family bonds could overcome any obstacle when tested by genuine need and danger. The touchdown was imminent, as Captain Rodriguez lined up with the runway, while fighting to maintain control of an aircraft that was barely responding to normal flight controls. The next few seconds would determine whether Flight 445 would be remembered as a tragedy or as an example of how when circumstances demanded extraordinary courage and leadership, both brothers silently prepared for impact, while thinking about their families and the future they hoped to share together if they survived. Their accidental reunion during this crisis had already transformed both their lives regardless of what happened in the next few minutes, as they faced their greatest challenge together. The emergency landing of Flight 445 at Denver International Airport became a testament to both professional aviation skills and human courage, as Captain Rodriguez successfully brought the damaged Boeing 737 to the ground despite multiple system failures, while the passengers led by the reunited Chen brothers demonstrated extraordinary cooperation and bravery during the evacuation that followed. The touchdown occurred at 4:47 p.m. Mountain Time, with the aircraft hitting the runway harder than normal, but remaining intact as Captain Rodriguez used every technique in her extensive training to keep the plane on the center line, while emergency vehicles raced alongside preparing for immediate response. In bringing the aircraft down safely, despite the extensive damage, would later be recognized as exceptional airmanship. Michael and David Chen, positioned at different emergency exits, immediately began coordinating the passenger evacuation with the flight attendants, while emergency responders boarded the aircraft to assist with the process. Teamwork and leadership had prepared passengers so well that the evacuation proceeded smoothly, despite the potential for panic and chaos. The aircraft came to a complete stop approximately 3,000 feet down the runway, with all major systems shut down, but no fire or additional structural damage that would prevent safe evacuation. That surrounded the aircraft within seconds of landing found passengers exiting in an orderly fashion, thanks largely to the preparation and leadership provided by the brothers and flight crew. Dr. Lisa Park immediately began treating passengers who had been injured during the turbulence and emergency landing, while coordinating with paramedics who boarded the aircraft to provide additional medical assistance. Her emergency room experience proved invaluable in triaging injuries and ensuring that the most seriously hurt passengers received priority care. The reunion between Michael and David during the crisis had created a bond that was even stronger than their childhood friendship, as they had faced death together, while also confronting the mistakes and misunderstandings that had kept them apart for 12 years. Their work together during the emergency had reminded both men of their shared values and natural compatibility. Within minutes of the evacuation's completion, both brothers were helping emergency responders account for all passengers and crew, while also providing comfort to those who were traumatized. Their natural leadership had extended beyond the aircraft to the emergency response efforts on the ground. The investigation that followed would determine that Flight 445 had encountered an unprecedented combination of severe weather and mechanical failures that created conditions far beyond normal aircraft operating parameters. The crew's professional response and the passenger cooperation led by the Chen brothers had prevented what could have been a catastrophic loss of life. Michael's first phone call after the emergency was to his two children in San Francisco to tell them he was safe, while also explaining that he had been reunited with their uncle David, whom they had heard about, but never met due to the family conflict. His voice filled with emotion as he described how the crisis had brought them back together. David called his mother for the first time in 12 years to tell her about both his survival and his reconciliation with Michael. Her tears of joy and relief were audible over the phone, as she learned that her two sons had finally healed the wounds that had divided their family for so long. The brothers spent hours after the emergency, talking about their lives, their regrets, and their hopes for rebuilding their relationship, while also maintaining contact with other passengers from Flight 445, who had become an extended family through their shared experience of survival and cooperation. Dr. Park later described the reunion between Michael and David as one of the most moving examples of human resilience and love that she had witnessed in her medical career. To set aside years of anger and pride when faced with a life-threatening crisis, demonstrated the fundamental power of family bonds. The other passengers who had witnessed the brothers' reunion and leadership during the emergency were deeply moved by their story, and many stayed in contact afterward to follow their efforts to rebuild their family relationships. Several passengers credited Michael and David's example with inspiring them to address their own family conflicts. Mountain West Airlines recognized both brothers for their exceptional passenger assistance during the emergency, while also commending the entire crew for their professional response to an extremely challenging situation. The company's investigation revealed that passenger cooperation had been crucial to the successful evacuation. Francisco restaurants for a week to spend time with David in Denver, while both brothers worked to process their traumatic experience and plan for their future relationship. They visited their father's grave together for the first time since the funeral that had driven them apart. David decided to relocate back to San Francisco to be closer to his brother and mother, while also getting to know Michael's children, who were excited to finally meet the uncle they had only heard about in stories. His software engineering skills would eventually help modernize Michael's restaurant operations. The brothers established a tradition of taking an annual trip together to honor both their reunion and the other passengers who had shared their experience on Flight 445. These journeys became opportunities to strengthen their rebuilt relationship, while also serving as reminders of how precious family connections truly are. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Wilson remained close friends with both brothers and often spoke about how the passenger cooperation during the emergency had made their job easier and contributed significantly to the successful outcome. They credited Michael and David's leadership with helping to prevent panic that could have made evacuation more difficult. The psychological counseling that both brothers received after the trauma helped them understand how their shared crisis had created conditions that made reconciliation not only possible but necessary. The counselor noted that extreme situations often strip away the superficial issues that divide people and reveal the deeper connections that bind them together. Michael's children developed a close relationship with their uncle David, who became actively involved in their lives and education, while also helping them understand their family history and cultural heritage. His presence filled a void they hadn't realized existed until he became part of their daily lives. The mother of both men organized a family reunion 6 months after the emergency to celebrate not only their survival, but also the healing of their family relationships. Relatives who had been affected by the brothers' conflict were overjoyed to see the family united again after 12 years of division. Both brothers became advocates for family reconciliation and conflict resolution, speaking at conferences and workshops about their experience and encouraging others not to let pride and misunderstanding destroy important relationships. Their story resonated with many people who had similar family conflicts. The aircraft that carried Flight 445 was eventually repaired and returned to service with a special plaque commemorating the crew's exceptional performance and the passenger cooperation that had made the emergency evacuation successful. Pilots who flew this aircraft often requested to hear the story of the Chen brothers' reunion. Today, Michael and David Chen remain as close as they were during their childhood, with their business partnership combining Michael's restaurant expertise with David's technology skills to create a successful company that honors their father's legacy while building new traditions for future generations. Their experience on Flight 445 taught them that life is too short and too unpredictable to waste on petty conflicts, and that the most important things in life are the relationships we build with the people we love. Their reunion during a crisis became the foundation for a stronger family bond than they had ever known. The incredible reunion of Michael and David Chen proves that sometimes the most devastating crises can lead to the most beautiful transformations, and that it's never too late to heal the wounds that divide families when pride and stubbornness give way to love and forgiveness. Their 12-year separation ended not in a peaceful moment of reflection, but in the terror of a failing aircraft where they had to choose between holding on to old grudges or working together to save lives. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a family conflict that seemed too deep to heal, or a relationship that was damaged by pride and misunderstanding? What would it take for you to reach out to someone you've lost touch with, or to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? Do you think extreme situations reveal our true priorities, Or do they just give us permission to act on feelings we've been hiding? Share your thoughts about family forgiveness and second chances in the comments below, and let me know if this story inspires you to reconnect with someone important in your life. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories that show how ordinary people can find extraordinary courage and love in the most challenging circumstances, and hit that notification bell so you never miss these inspiring tales that prove family bonds can overcome any obstacle when we choose love over pride.